Hello, folks, and welcome back to another Tom Talks. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow the blog, follow the Instagram, and of course, check out the new podcast. Episode 2 came out on Monday. So, yeah, the links for all that will be in the description box. So, yeah. Today, we're going to talk about Lorde's new album, Solar Power. An album I've liked Lorde's music in the past. She, of course, blew up back when she was 16 with the track Royals, which was a big song back then. And that album, Pure Heroin, pretty solid album. Had bangers on it like Teams, Tennis Court. Ribs is a track that is quite iconic in Lorde's fan base and in pop in general. And she followed that up back in 2017, I believe, with the album Melodrama, which was a very melancholic pop record, was a bit more depressing and sadder than what came on Pure Heroin. Green Light, I remember from that album, was an amazing pop track. Like, if you want like the perfect pop track, Green Light comes as close as possible. So this is a third album, and it's gone in a bit of a different direction. It's very beachy, it's very acoustic. Some have criticised it for being a bit more optimistic, but I don't think it's as optimistic as some people have made it out to be. So, and of course the album cover people have been talking about because her ass is in it. Cool, whatever. So yeah, the album kicks off with The Path, which has this quite beachy electronic guitar vibe. It reminded me of sort of a more chilled out version of the Red Hot Chili Peppers track Californication. It's about being a broken person, looking to find herself, her not being the right person for this person who's interested in her. I think it's a good start to the album. It does what it says on the tin. It introduces sort of kind of what the album's going to be about, and instrumentally it fits quite well the rest of the album. Then we go on to Solar Power, which was the big single from this album, which it just didn't do much for me. I just don't find it that interesting a track. I think the chorus, when she's going, I can't sing, so I'm not going to do that. It's quite anthemic, but the rest of the track I just don't find that interesting, to be honest. But it is a single sounding song, but it's just not for me really. Number 3, California, was probably one of my favourite tracks from the album. It has quite a nighttime beach vibe to it, with like the gentle guitar strumming and then the synthesizers. It's basically about Lorde saying that like she wants to move on from California. She wants to move away from that lifestyle. She's not enjoying it anymore. And I think he does that very well. I think it's one of the more introspective tracks on the album, and I think it's basically saying Lorde has experienced the lifestyle because of her rise to fame, and she just wants to go back home. She just wants to be herself again. And I thought it was a nice track. Track number 4 was another single called Stoned at the Nail Salon. It has a very mellow acoustic guitar vibe. It's sort of about worrying about time fading away, growing older. It mentions about how beautiful women, their looks fade away. And Lorde basically saying like she has all these worries, so she just goes and gets stoned and goes to the nail salon because that sort of takes her mind off things, which is, I think, a relatable track for some people. I mean, the pressures and worries of life, you know, we all have that thing that sort of distracts us a bit. With me, it's music, or going raves. With Lorde, it's smoking a doobie and getting her nails done. I think the track went on a little bit too long, but I think it does get the message across well, and I thought it was a decent sort of mellow acoustic track. Fallen Fruit was one of the more interesting tracks. It's quite a big discussion, sort of calling out the generations before for not having done enough with the environment and sort of allowing the planet to get to the state it is. I think the guitar in this carries the track along very well, and Lorde, it sounds very serious and saddened. It's one of her more passionate deliveries on the track. And these sort of sounds, like the wind whistling in part of the track, they add atmosphere, and I just think this track does what it's supposed to do very well. A lot of people do tracks where they talk about the environment and stuff, and it doesn't always come across well. This, I think it does what it's supposed to do pretty simply, but pretty well as well. So I like Fallen Fruit. Secrets from a Girl Who's Seen It All is basically Lorde looking back at her track Ribs from her first album, sort of seeing how far she's come since then, sort of giving herself her past self advice and maybe younger people listening to the track. It's got a very campfire vibe to it, and yeah, I think it shows how far she's come as a person emotionally. And I just thought it was a cool track. Not the best track on the album, but it did something kind of interesting, and it did it well. The Man with the Axe was sort of this average acoustic ballad where she's sort of talking about the pain of like being an artist, and it had an interesting concept to it, but just vocally and the instrumental, which just didn't do that much for me, so it's not something I'm gonna go back to. Dominoes, did it really need to be there? I mean, it's kind of cool because she opened the door to the studio when she was playing the track, so you could hear the sirens outside, because obviously last summer there was the protests going on all over the world pretty much. But overall, it's a very short track. It just doesn't do that much for me, really. There's like a run of like 3 tracks, like starting with The Man with the Axe and ending with the one following Dominoes, that sort of just, Lorde just doesn't seem that passionate. She just, vocally, she's not that interesting. Instrumentally, the acoustic sound isn't doing anything different or new. It's just a track that I'm not particularly that interested in. Big Star is a track that, it's an ode to her dog that was dying at the time, which is kind of sad, and I feel bad, but I just don't find the track that interesting. She also talks about moving on from partying and coming home to tell the dog about her adventures, and it's kind of cute in that sense, but again, vocally, there's not that grit and passion for a track you would expect about your best friend, in a sense. But I don't know, it just, again, it wasn't really what I was looking for personally, and I'd expect a track like this to maybe move me a bit. It didn't really, so maybe it's because I'm a cat person, but I have a heart, so I just don't think this track did what it could have done. We then move on to Leader of a New Regime, which is about escaping to like a dystopian society, and this like sort of celebrity who thinks they're all that, taking away their belongings to start this. Again, it's an interesting concept. It's just not done very Lorde just doesn't sound like she cares that much. There's not the passion and the sort of oomph in her vocals, and the track's just a bit too short. Like, it could have been explored a bit more. This is like a quite interesting concept, but it's just not explored very well, and for me, I'm just left a bit disappointed. Mood Ring is probably the last track on this album that I liked. It was a nice change of pace because the last few tracks were just quite dull. Kind of like a sarcastic look at spirituality, which I found quite humorous, and like Lorde actually has a bit of passion in her vocals as she's talking about putting crystals in the sun and moon symbols and stuff, and I just found it quite funny. There was energy in the guitar as well, and the synths towards the end of the track, and it gave me a bit of an 80s vibe actually. Not quite sure who or where from, but I just quite liked it. I liked the humorous nature of it, and it was a nice change of pace from the sort of quite samey, dull acoustic ballads that we got. And finally, the album ends on Oceanic Feeling. Is her talking about like a family and growing up in New Zealand and wanting to have a family herself, and I don't know, I just found this track a bit of a slog. It's 6 minutes plus, which is quite long, so a song really needs to do something to keep my attention for that long, and this just didn't do that. Instrumentally, it wasn't that interesting. I don't think it was that good lyrically. It was kind of just like a story, but just not told very interestingly. And yeah, it's a bit of a meh end to the album. And overall, yeah, I'm kind of mixed on this album, to be honest. There's some good stuff here. The first half of the album was pretty solid. Some good introspective tracks, but as it goes on, like, the acoustic nature of the album just gets a bit repetitive. Like, different and weird things could have been done. There could have been a bit more, like, other sounds put in there into the instrumental. And Lorde on a lot of tracks just doesn't sound that interested or passionate. So, yeah, I'm a bit disappointed by this record. Although I would say that this isn't, like, a completely happy album the way people have made it out to be. I mean, like, she's talking about the planet dying and being depressed and not feeling herself. I wouldn't say it's different in that perspective to, like, melodrama. But, I don't know. I was hoping for a bit more, and I didn't get it. It is what it is. Overall, I'd give this album a 5 out of 10. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the review. Leave a comment if you agree, disagree, or you got something to say. And stay tuned for another Tom Talks.